moved from the meeting. Okay, I think now we are recording. So as I was saying, please be available in that WhatsApp group as well. Okay. So, and I will send you the link to the YouTube channel after the class, where you will be able to find out all these videos. Okay. So we have talked about the class timings. We have talked about the grading policy, and we have talked about where all the videos will be uploaded and the ways of communications. Okay. You have any doubt, any comments? I think for this class, who is the DR, departmental representative or class representative?
Sir, me, Om.
You are the DR. That is good. All right. So let
Sir,
us.
I just wanted to clarify whether the grading will be absolute or relative.
Relative. Generally, I do relative grading. Yeah, it will
Okay.
be relative grading. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this time, grading policy is extremely lenient, as you know. So I don't think you should be very worried about it. But I still urge that be very um, attentive in the class and study hard, because this is the only option that you will have to study geophysics in your whole 5 years course. Okay. So there is no other single course where you will study geophysics. So things related to geochemistry are rather frequent. I mean, you study mineralogy, petrology, geochemistry by itself. So there are plenty of places where you will be exposed to geochemistry. But due to faculty constraints and the way our syllabus is set up, geophysics, there is only one opportunity where you will be able to study geophysics in this whole 5 years. But that doesn't mean it is less relevant. It is not at all. I mean, for example, if you were sitting for any final exam or any national level exams, for example, NET, GATE, or GSI, or whatever, um, so geophysics and geochemistry is like 50-50%. So you have to make sure that you grasp everything that I say, that I ask you to read, and that I think will be enough for you to, as a geology student or as an earth and environmental science students, to be uh, to be quite capable of answering such questions in geophysics. Now, of course, there is a 5 years geophysics program in different universities, and they study only geophysics with a much greater detail, right? So we cannot expect to cover all that in one semester. That's not possible. But I will still try to give you a flavor on all the aspects of geophysics that is there. Okay, what else I need to talk about before we begin? Grading classes, and we talked about exams, links. Am I forgetting something?
Sir, reference books.
Yes, books. That is something I need to talk about. Thank you for reminding me. So, the books that you should read, I think there is one called Lowry, and this book I think is freely available in the internet. Okay, and the name of the book is something called Solid Earth Geophysics. Or also this Lowrie. Okay, Lowry. Now this book is also available in the library. I think you can get a e-copy from the library as well. But I am pretty sure that this book is freely available in the internet. So if you search in Google Solid Earth Geophysics by Lowry, I think you will find one link from where you can download this particular book, the whole book. Okay. So that is one book, and this is the main book that we will follow, Lowry's book. And then for reference and for very some special cases, and I will indicate that. And this is a bit advanced book that is by Telford. That's also by Fundamental of Geophysics or something. If you search like Telford Geophysics, you will find it as well. I have also asked library to get an e-copy for this book for Telford. Okay, so I'm sure you will be able to find out this book as well from the library and e-copy. Okay, but this is more like a reference book. Okay, so if you want to understand something in bit more details, if you want to get into the more advanced part of a particular topic, I will recommend that you study Telford. Yeah, and especially in the second half of the lecture, second half of the course, I will keep on supplying you some slides. Okay, which you should read. Okay, I mean the slides will be projected, of course, and you can take notes from the videos itself. So wherever I present with slides, you should. I mean, I have prepared the slides in such a way that it has a lot of words, so that this can also work as a reading material for you. Okay, and in few cases, I will also send you some scientific papers. Okay. So we will, as I move ahead with the course, I will, keep on hinting you to the right material that you need to read. Okay. Any more questions that you have at this moment? Okay. So let's then begin with the course. So the course is named as Solid Earth Geophysics, right? Okay. So what do you expect to learn from this course? Of course, you can see it has the third word in this whole course is called geophysics. So this is around the physics of the earth, right? We'll study the physics of the earth. Now, there is the first two words talks about solid earth. Okay. So do you know why these two words, why it is not only a geophysics course, rather it is a solid earth geophysics course? I'll tell you why. Simply because if you think about the earth, I'll just draw a rough picture of the earth. Okay. And then I'm sure, and we will study this in a little while, that you can subdivide if you start from the top surface to the inside of the earth. You can subdivide the earth into three basic layers. So the first very top layer is called crust, right? Crust, and then I have mantle, and then I have core. Okay? And then here, of course, I have the atmosphere. Now, if you think about it, atmosphere is mostly gaseous, right? Is mostly gaseous. Think about the core, the very central part of the core, which we call as the inner core. This is supposed to be solid. The outer core, however, is perhaps liquid, and we will see why we say so later on. The upper part of the mantle, the very upper part of the mantle, or mantle, is viscous. Let's just say liquid, right, for the time being. And the lower mantle, lower part of the mantle, can you tell me what is lower mantle, whether it is solid or whether it is liquid? Anyone? The lower part of the mantle. Come on, guys. One thing I forgot to say, you have to be interactive. Otherwise, I'll pick your name and ask question. Okay. So please unmute and talk. Otherwise, it becomes boring, one-way street. Okay, someone says liquid or Kavin Kumar. Okay, molten, liquid. Okay, so most of you think that it is liquid. Okay, so we will discuss that. So uh, in a time scale, okay, we will talk about the time scale later on. But for the timing, just remember lower mantle is perhaps solid. Okay. Now, if you go there, if you just touch the lower mantle, you will see that the lower mantle is solid. It's not liquid. But we will talk about it, why this concept of liquidity in lower mantle comes into the picture. But in general, lower mantle is solid. Okay. And then the crust, that is of course solid. Atmosphere is gaseous. So solid earth geophysics essentially deals with the geophysics of the solid part of the earth. Okay? Solid part of the earth. And so, for example, we will go there. I'll project the slide. I'm just explaining what is solid earth geophysics, and then I will come to the slide. So a major part of this course will not be on slides. Okay, I will write down, and then you have to take notes and from the video itself, because there are plenty of derivations which I don't want to take you through slides. Okay, there will be some slides in some cases, but majority of the course will not be on slides. Okay, but I hope you can read what I'm writing. Okay, so now, so the solid earth geophysics mostly deals with the solid parts of the earth, the physics of the solid part of the earth. Okay, and for all practical purposes, we will mostly deal with crust. Okay. So you can say we will 90% of the time, 90% of the time, we will talk about the physics of the crust. So 90% of the time, we will talk about physics of the crust. Okay. As I said, the crust is solid. Okay. So hence, it is called solid earth geophysics. Now, of course, there is physics in the atmosphere as well, but we are not going to concentrate on that. Okay. We are mostly going to concentrate in the physics of the solid part of the earth, and that includes and that's mostly on the crustal part. Now, physics of the earth, I mean, why do I have to define physics of the earth? Because I mean, whatever physics we have read from school and whatever physics we are reading right now elsewhere in the physics department, that is physics, right? And physics is in the earth, right? So why do we have to, I mean, specifically study physics of the earth? Because using these basic principles of physics, we are going to introduce certain geophysical techniques. Okay. Geophysical techniques. Okay. And those techniques we will use to essentially for different purposes. Okay, say for example, we will use those uh, techniques to identify the structure, of the earth. We will use for mineral exploration. We will use those techniques, those geophysical techniques, for in the hydrocarbon industry, in the oil and gas industry. We will use them to study earthquakes, so on and so forth. Okay. So the basic principles that are applied in physics, we will study them briefly, but most of them you know. And then what we will do, we will essentially derive certain principles from those universal laws, and then try to apply them as geophysical techniques, which is relevant for uh, identifying the structure of the earth, in mineral exploration, in oil and gas exploration and production, and maybe in earthquake modeling, and so on and so forth, and in many other different uh, processes that we need to study. Okay, so if you think in terms of the syllabus, what we are going to study, we are going to study about gravity and its associated techniques. We are going to study magnetics, the magnetic property of the earth, okay, and different minerals and everything, and its application. Okay, then we are going to study about electrical methods. So we will study the electrical properties of the earth and corresponding methods. Study something called petrophysics. Petrophysics, petro means rock, and physics is physics, so rock physics. Yeah, we'll study seismic, and that is about the propagation of the elastic waves through the earth, both in terms of, so seismic will have two components. We will have reflection seismic, and we will have earthquake seismology. Okay. We will study magnetotelluric. I will tell you what magnetotelluric is later. Essentially studying the electromagnetics. Just clear the canvas. So we will study magnetotelluric. That's essentially electromagnetism. So these are the different topics that we will study. So I'm sure you know about the basics of gravity, the basics of magnetism, the basics of electricity, um, elastic wave propagation, the basics of electromagnetics, right? We will touch upon the basics a little bit, but then what we will do, we will try to derive certain principles from these broader topics, and then try to use them in the aspects that we have just described, mineral exploration, hydrocarbon exploration, and um, studying earth structure. Okay. So, any questions so far? Anything that was not clear? Is it clear what I am writing on the whiteboard? Because I need to make sure that you are understanding it. Excellent. Okay, so now before we actually move into gravity, magnetics, and electrical methods and petrophysics, the actual part of the geophysics, what we need to do is essentially understand the interior of the Earth. I'm sure you have read about the interior of the Earth. What difference defines solid and liquid and semi-solid while explaining the nature of the Earth's interiors? Hold that question, Kevin. We will just discuss in a moment. Okay, we will discuss that. Okay. So now, before we get into the actual part of geophysics, what we need to do, we need to understand the interior of the Earth and something about plate tectonics. Okay. Now, I'm sure you all have read about plate tectonics and you all have read about the interior of the Earth and the composition of the Earth. But just to put us all into the same place, I'm not sure how much you have read. I will try to cover some of the bare minimum stuff, okay, and then ask you to read the first chapter of Lowry, okay, where it deals with plate tectonics and the interior of the Earth, and read them in detail, of course. But then I will really touch upon the some of the very basic concepts so that we are all in the same page for the first 2 or 3 classes, okay, and then we will start our lectures on gravity. Okay? That will be the first topic on geophysics, but of course, we have to establish these geophysical principles on the Earth's surface, on the structure of the Earth. So it's better that we all come into the same level. Okay. So now, as a result, what I will do, I will take you through some of the slides. Most of it you know, so listen to them as stories. Okay. Okay. So this is a very beautiful picture, as you can see. Um, the picture of the Earth, the way the Earth looks from the moon surface. Okay, beautiful. Right. So while I think when you were a kid, you must have studied the story of Goldilocks. Have you or not? How many of you have studied the story of Goldilocks as a kid? Yeah. Okay. So it's a very, very funny story. I don't know how many of you have studied, but I'll just tell you the story first. So what happens? This small girl whose name is Goldilocks, she finds herself in the woods and then finds a small house. Okay, I'll just tell you the part of the story which is relevant. Okay, and then when she enters to that house, she finds no one, and then she finds on the dining table there are 3 bowls of soup. Okay, one in a large bowl, one in a medium bowl, and there is one small bowl. And she tries to taste the soup from the first bowl, and what she finds that the soup is too hot. Okay, then she goes to the second bowl, the medium-sized bowl, and she finds that the soup to be too cold. And then she goes to the small bowl, yeah, and then she tastes that the soup, and she says, "This is just right. It's not too hot, not too cold." So the larger bowl of the soup was made for and that the house that she actually entered is the house of a bear family, and the larger bowl was for the papa bear, the medium-sized bowl was for the mama bear, and the small bowl was for this baby bear. Okay, and this small child Goldilocks actually find that this bowl of soup is just right temperature. Okay. So Earth is called a Goldilocks planet. Why? Because it has a very the temperature, the position of the Earth from the sun, the distance of the position of the Earth from the sun is just right. Yeah, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, and just right for what? Just right to have two basic things in the Earth. One is it can hold water in the liquid form. Okay, number one, it can hold water in the liquid form, and it can hold oxygen in gaseous form. Okay? And these are two fundamentals criteria for the generation and flourishment of life, right? So hence, Earth is called Goldilocks planet. Now we will see that it's not only it is exactly at the right temperature, right? So we will see that this right temperature is not only a function of the distance of the planet Earth from the sun. It has also um, contribution from the from its internal origin, the way Earth is cooling right now. Okay, what is the ambient temperature at the core? What is the ambient temperature in the mantle, and what is the ambient temperature in the top surface of the Earth, in the crust? So that also plays a vital role in determining uh, the, the 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 surface temperature of the Earth on which we all live. Okay. So the moral of the story: Earth is called a Goldilocks planet because it is just right for the flourishment of life. Okay. So now there are two types of layering which is generally describes the internal structure of the Earth. One we call chemical layering, the other one we call as physical layering. Now, chemical layering, we call it as crust, mantle, and core. Okay. So this is not physical layering. So crust has a very different chemical composition than the mantle, and mantle has a very different chemical composition from the core. Okay. So the crust is further subdivided into upper crust, lower crust. Mantle is further subdivided into upper mantle, lower mantle, and core is further subdivided into outer core and inner core. Now, the upper crust is solid, no problem. I mean, that is where all our activities, for example, all the mineral exploration, all the hydrocarbon exploration, and everything is restricted. Okay. The lower part of the crust, however, is semi-solid, liquid. Okay. The upper part of the mantle is liquid, but the lower part of the mantle is generally solid. Now, why did I say generally solid? This depends on the time scale at which we are looking at it. Okay. Now, what essentially determines, I mean, what is that to do with if a material is solid or liquid? We know temperature plays the role, but what that has to do with time. Okay. Now I will tell you why this controversy essentially comes, whether the mantle is liquid or the mantle is solid. Now you know, shear wave actually propagates through mantle. Okay. Shear wave propagates through mantle. Shear wave, shear elastic waves propagate through mantle. So if you have an earthquake, you can actually prove that the shock waves that is generated from an earthquake can propagate through mantle. Now, elastic waves only propagates through solid. So by that logic, the mantle should be solid, right? Now, you know the mantle has convection current in it, right? So convection doesn't happen in a solid. Convection has to happen in liquid. So by that logic, mantle is liquid. So where is the catch? Catch is in the time frame, the time of observation, the time frame of observation at which you are observing the mantle, right? So for example, if we are talking about shock waves, shear waves, that is an instantaneous phenomena. That is elastic collision that happens in the snap of a second. Okay, and hence we will find that the same material is behaving as a solid, but then mantle convection happens in the scale of millions of years. Okay, and in that time frame, the mantle behaves as a liquid material. Now I will give you another easy example to understand this. Okay. You have all seen asphalt or tar, which we use to make roads, right? In common terms, we call them pitch, right? I'm sure you have all seen them in some point in your time, in your life. Okay. Now take a piece of, take a small lump of this material, asphalt, okay, and then make a ball out of it, okay, and then throw that ball of asphalt way with as much energy as you have on a piece of glass, okay, and it depends on how fast you throw that piece of asphalt and how brittle that glass is. You can actually break that glass with this asphalt. Okay, so there is an elastic collision, and this asphalt is behaving as a solid material, right? Now take that same asphalt and gently push it. You will see that the asphalt is flowing, right? Are you able to visualize the situation, all of you? Are you able to visualize? Yes, no? No, sir? Okay. So, yes, you could not visualize what I said. Okay, I'll try to explain once more. You have a piece of asphalt, you push it slowly, it will flow. If you make a lump out of it and throw on a glass, it will act as a solid, it will break. There will be an elastic collision. Okay, and it will break the glass. So the same material behaves as a solid material. So it depends on the time frame. So if you are deforming that body, if you are trying to move that body in a very fast manner, in the snap of a second, the body acts as a solid. On the other hand, if the strain rate is slow, if you are deforming that body in a slow manner, then what happens? The same body behaves as a viscous or a liquid. Okay? And same happens with the mantle. When the shock wave or the elastic wave propagates through it, it behaves as a solid. But when you provide millions of years of timeline and you allow the temperature to adjust, it can behave as a liquid, and the convection cycle actually takes place. Okay. So what we have talked about so far is the is the chemical layering in the earth. It's very important to note the boundaries. Okay, what is the name of the crust mantle boundary? What is the name of the upper crust, lower crust boundary? What is the name of the upper mantle, lower mantle boundary? What is the name of the lower mantle outer core boundary? What is the name of the outer core, inner core boundary? Okay. So these are the important names that you have to find out from the book. You have to remember their names. You have to remember what boundaries are we talking about, and you have to remember a tentative depth at which you find that boundary. Now, in terms of the core, it has two components. One is the outer core, the other is inner core. It is also said the outer core is liquid simply because the shock wave cannot propagate through the outer core. Okay? The shear wave cannot propagate through the outer core. Hence, we say that the outer core is solid. Sorry, the outer core is liquid. Now, there is another thing. There are charged particles in the outer core, which essentially moves, and there is a current which we call as eddies current. Please write down. We call it as eddies current. We will talk about eddies current later on in details. But this eddies current, which happens in the outer core, is responsible of charged particles. Happens in the outer core is responsible for the magnetic field in the earth. Okay? The eddies current that happens in the outer core due to the movement of the charged particle is responsible for the magnetic field in the earth. Okay? So
So I
now,
have questions.
yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned that the mantle. So does that mean the whole mantle behaves as a liquid and solid at any time, like
Yes,
in a time
that is
frame?
true. That is true.
But
That
you
is true.
mentioned that both of them, like the lower mantle can be called as liquid, whereas the upper mantle is called as solid. So
No, no, no. I said the other way around. So,
okay,
so if you think about it, for example, the lower mantle and sorry, the upper mantle and the lower crust, yeah, that is called asthenosphere. Okay, that is
yes,
we'll just look at it. I mean, when we talk about the physical layering of the earth, is called the asthenosphere. Okay, and that is where all the magma is. Okay, but
okay,
then also you can actually and establishing your convection cycle in the upper mantle is no problem. Okay, you can think about it that there is this hot magma inside and where the convection cycle works. But then through the upper mantle as well, the shear wave actually propagates.
okay,
So
yes,
if you think in terms of it, I mean the upper mantle is a bit more liquid than the lower mantle. Okay, but the lower mantle is completely solid. If you go right now and touch it, it is solid. It's just very hot stuff, but it is solid. Okay, and the shock wave propagates through it.
So
Okay?
this would be due to its geochemical properties, right?
Geochemical properties, and another important thing is its pressure. Okay, so
Okay,
very high pressure, even if the temperature is very high, because of the very high pressure in that region, where all materials are forced to stay in the solid state.
okay. And
It's yeah.
a second question is that for the outer core, so while we say
Yeah.
that inner core and the mantle are both solid, then why does the outer core stay liquid?
Why does it go? It all depends on your on this depends on the chemical properties actually. You know? So
Okay,
the type of it's the exact answer is not known. I can tell you very frankly. The exact answer is not known, but this mostly depends on the chemical composition of the material that is present in the outer core.
okay,
Okay? And for that, you see that the outer core is solid, and the outer core is liquid, and that you find also from the elastic wave propagation that you don't see the elastic wave to propagate throughout. Okay? And
yes,
people were struggling to find out an answer. Why do we actually see? Um, okay, that is a very good question. Yes, what is the need of a convection cycle in the lower mantle? I'll just come to that. Okay. Now, how the magnetic field of the Earth actually generates? Okay, what is the reason? I mean, there must be something going on. I mean, there is not a very big magnet which is kind of put inside the Earth, so that is not there. People know about it. So there must be some electric field. So where is that electric field? And people then came up with an explanation that perhaps there is current that happens in the outer core of the Earth that is responsible for that magnetic field. Okay, so what is the need of the convection in lower mantle? Okay, so now there are two theories. One says that the convection cycle only restricted in the upper mantle. Okay, and then there is another theory that the convection cycle indeed involves the total the upper mantle and lower mantle. Okay. Some people say that the convection cycle is just restricted here. And then some people say that convection cycle is even more penetrative. This goes all the way up to lower mantle. Now, what is the necessity? If the convection cycle is smaller, it will perhaps not be able to move all the larger plates. Okay, so you need sufficient amount of force to be operative to move the larger plates that we have, because the convection cycle guides plate tectonics, right? So if you think about moving of such larger plates, you perhaps need to have a more penetrative convection cycle, and hence people conceive the idea that perhaps the convection cycles are even more penetrative.
So what I was saying is that the convection which is happening in the lower mantle
Yeah.
is much more powerful than the convection which take place in the upper mantle.
No, it's. I mean, if you think if the convection cycle itself, I mean, if it is so, let me put it this way: if my wheels are smaller, right? If it is only restricted in the upper mantle, if my wheels are smaller, I will not be able to carry a larger load, right? If my wheels are larger, then I will be able to create a larger load, right? So having a more penetrative convection cycle means my wheels are larger, right? So I will explain that bit more when we come to convection cycle. Okay. So yes, you have any more question?
No. Yeah.
I'll explain that in bit more details as I move with the slides. Okay. So mantle is a solid in small time scale and flows over large time span of time. Exactly. That's how it is. So if the strain rate is the rate of deformation is smaller, then it's instantaneous. So delta T is small, then it behaves as a solid. If it is at a larger time span, it behaves as a fluid. And the most appropriate analogy comes from the asphalt. Okay. Yes, Om?
So the evidence of super plumes, doesn't it negate the fact of smaller mantle convections?
Well, plumes have very different origin, I mean, the presence of super plumes itself is controversial. Okay. So these are all different hypotheses. The presence of super plume, I mean, now the theory of plume essentially came from the continental flood basalts, the larger continental flood basalts that you observe. For example, Deccan. But nowadays, people are saying that there were perhaps no plumes associated with them. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so things become a bit more controversial when you bring the plume story into it. But as I said, there are surely two groups of opinions. Someone says that the convection cycles are simply restricted in the upper mantle, but some says they are more penetrative. Some says there are two cycles actually, one in the upper mantle, one in the lower mantle.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, so plenty of theories around it because you can't see them. I mean, the only direct the evidences that you have to picture how the mantle is are from your seismic maps, which we will see later on, and the lava that comes out through the volcanoes. That's about it. You don't have any other means to look into the mantle. So these are all hypothesis based or simulation based hypothesis, right? By observing the geophysical phenomena that happens on the crust. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
So let's move ahead. So as I said, the compositional layering are crust, mantle, and core, and then the physical layerings are lithosphere, which is brittle, which is the top part of the crust, then asthenosphere that includes the hot, weak plastic. Okay. And this includes the lower part of the crust and the upper part of the mantle, and then the mesosphere, hot but stronger due to high pressure. Stronger means solid, So lithosphere, asthenosphere, and mesosphere. Okay, and then comes your core, inner core and outer core. Okay. So compositional layering and physical layering. So if you think about it, core is dense. It mainly contains iron and nickel. Inner core is solid. Outer core is liquid. Mantle, less dense than the core. Iron and magnesium silicates, mostly solid. Upper mantle is partially molten, as I said. Okay. Crust, outermost layer, very thin and rigid. The continental crust is made of granitic rocks, which has a density of 2.8 gram per cc. And oceanic crust is mostly made up of basalt, which is denser, is around 3 gram per cc. Okay. So these are the some of the things which I'm sure you have already read, but no harm in reminding yourselves once more. Okay. So now this is what you have to, and you will find questions from this always coming in net. Okay. Net or get everywhere. One question from this is absolutely common. Okay. So what is the upper crust? The discontinuity between upper crust and lower crust is called Conrod discontinuity. The crust mantle discontinuity, the boundary between crust and mantle is called Moho. The upper mantle between lower mantle and upper mantle is called Repecky. Between lower mantle and outer core, it's called Gutenberg. And between outer core and inner core, it's called Lehmann. Okay. So it's not only these names and which boundary it reflects to, you have to also remember an average depth of them. Okay. You will find that in the internet or in the book that I just said. Okay. But you must mug up these numbers. Okay. It's absolutely important because people do ask these questions. They will ask you, tell me what is repeated discontinuity. You have said is the discontinuity between upper and lower mantle, and give me an average depth of it. Okay. So you have to provide that depth, or in the multiple choice questions, people do ask about it. So some of the informations must be handy to you. Okay, so now as we have been discussing, how do we know about the internal structure? What are the things that we have? Simply because although there is a movie made Journey to the Interior of the Earth, we cannot virtually go there, right? I mean, it's not possible. So how do we know? We try to know them from the meteorites, because meteorites has the composition age to determine the composition and the age of the Earth. Okay, because we say that meteorites are essentially the primitive representation of the Earth before the fractionation happened. You know, so it started with a molten material, and then slowly it started losing. The Earth essentially started losing heat, and there was a differentiation between crust, mantle, and core. But then the meteorite kind of represents the undepleted, unfractionated material, right? Because that is your primary assumption. So if you study a meteorite, you should be able to comment on the composition of the Earth, which you can't see. Seismic waves, we will discuss about them. Seismic waves are nothing but elastic waves. And elastic waves, as I said, you know, can be very helpful in determining whether a particular piece of rock through which it is propagating is solid or liquid. So, and not only that, it can also, depending on the acoustic impedance of a layer. Yeah? So acoustic impedance essentially guides how an elastic wave essentially propagates through that media. So, like for example, the refractive index determines the propagation of optical waves. Okay. Similarly, the acoustic impedance guides the acoustic impedance is the property that guides the propagation of elastic waves. You must find out, as I said, what is acoustic impedance. You must take a note and then find out what is acoustic impedance. Okay. So I will not always explain everything. So it's your also duty that you go back, and if you don't understand any word, you can ask me. But then better is If I say a new word, you go back and find out what is acoustic impedance, and similar words if I bring them to your notice. Okay. And of course, volcanoes, as I said, it brings out the molten material from the inner part of the earth, so, and that provides enough information as well how the internal structure of the earth is. Okay, so I think we can stop here, and we will continue with the lecture in the next class. But before that, let us see if you have any more questions to ask. Anyone?
So one of the students had earlier asked if you would refer to if you would tell us about the particular sections in the book to be read.
Yeah, when the time comes, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Okay, but as the way to follow the lectures is as I talk about the things, I'm covering certain topics, right? So what you were supposed to do is to go back to the textbook and read those topics, as simple as that, in bit more details.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I say, for example, if I don't touch about tides, I don't talk about tides, that means perhaps it's not something is extremely relevant for this particular course. I'm not saying it's not relevant, will be relevant, but then not for this particular course. So you might skip that from your reading in the book. Okay, no, I mean, you can read it, of course, for your own knowledge, but not for the course itself. Okay, so. It's not possible to cover everything that is written on the book. So I will select selective topics which are in the syllabus, of course. So you must read the topic that I'm covering. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, if I have to refer to certain portion of the book, of course, I will do that. Okay? Anything else? Is everything clear? Whatever I said, is the teaching speed okay for all of you? You just answer, one of you, please. Is the speed okay? You could understand everything? Excellent. All right, then I will see you tomorrow then, same time. Thank you very much for attending today. Take care. Bye.